Alright, so one more video for you motherfuckers. So, I say that under advisement because the people who appreciate this are really kind of like following the path of Horus, mostly. So, it's like a Horus ISIS joke. Anyways, so I want to get like the purpose and the actual brass tacks of the end stage of the whole activity thing. So, you find in the Tantra that the activities that the yogin is supposed to do, well, not supposed to, but is capable of doing, would render a great service to the state. This, you know, you only need to look at the records. Like, if someone can actually manifest Siddhi, like, you want that guy on your team, right? Well, the way you actually play the game is you have like 5 or 6 of those fucking people. And together they can, simply by having interactions between themselves, alter events in the world at large. And it's like the old secret of how things are run. Now, the missing element that's been fucking everything up is something that would probably be most familiar under the name of the Nation of Israel. I mean, as weird as that sounds, that represents a kind of power structure that's supposed to run through everything, right? And it really is kind of like an Anunnaki vibe. Like, there's people from space who like run shit, you know. It's more or less like that. And the deputized descendants of theirs that stick around on planets are like, those are more or less like a ruling class, you know. They're the people who have the ability to interface with the technological apparatus that is non-physical, and that it's both it's kind of like a 3-part key. Like, maybe we talked about that before. I got fucking deleted from Instagram, but it's like a 3-part key, right? It's the 3-body problem. So you have to have a certain genetic code, right? And that's not meant to be like a racist statement. That's simply saying that they're descendants of these people that made this shit, and those are the ones that are going to be able to access it. Just that simple. So the descendants that you're looking at are the descendants of the Donovas, right? They're basically the descendants of Maya Donova, because when you look at the Indian text, and they're quite clear that Maya Donova is the guy who is building all of this. And then when you kind of look at it from the Asura angle, that becomes Queen Maya. And that is also really just another word for power, right? It's like magical power. And you find that the people who are termed more or less human beings, right? Humanish beings that are called Asura, they're the ones who have the ability to exercise this power called Maya. And in some sense, that's referring to in the ability to create illusions. But really what it is like, they have the ability to not only, they really have the ability to interact with the kind of aggregates of the local environment just directly. And the way that there's the kind of several ways to do this. There's a way that involves no medium except for your own consciousness. Like, that's the Rishi's way of doing things. It's why they're the ultimate arbiters, right? I mean, you still find, even in the Indian scriptures, that this small group of Rishis, like a group of 7 people, 7 humans, are the ones who actually call all the shots and can basically fuck anybody's day up if they want to. And that's really how all of the war shit in those epics kicks off is because there's a Rishi named Durvasa who fucking takes the Devas and just destroys all their power. It just on a fucking whim because Indra's mount, this elephant, just pisses him off. So he just says, alright, your whole tribe is fucked. And, you know, and some of those Rishi guys really like that. And, you know, you would kind of, I guess it's hard to parallel them in the Western scriptures. It's not that they're angels, because the things that you would term like in the El guys, you know, the real angels, those are more or less like these Asura people, right? And the ones who agree with the current Indra, because Indra is a title, just means like the chieftain of those 33 people, right? That guy is what's called the Vajra holder. And like we were talking about before, that's basically the person with the biggest reality quotient around. Like, you can't, it's like having one of those Tablet of Destiny things. Like, you can't fuck with that person's plans or designs because what they think is real and what you think is not. It's basically how it works. So the situation as it stands is, you know, this is already getting ready to switch over, right? As far as the timeline of this place is concerned, things are already supposed to switch over, right? The Indra is supposed to go to a different person, right? And I'm not sure who is supposed to be next, but that shit is all shifted now. Because the old way of how things were broken up is less relevant in the current environment that we have, and is even less relevant when you factor in some of the possible outcomes of the different system architectures that are certain to arise, like in the environment we have now, right? Because the whole idea was, like, the idea of the joint investment vehicle that I was talking about way back in the day, like, what that is a version of the Marduk thing, where you basically take the capacity of the Yidam, right? One of the things about like Vajrakumara or Mithras or any of these Yidam deities that you find from Tibet back to fucking Persia, right? And before, they're shooting like small versions of themselves out of the pores of their skin, right? Or like sparks are flying out of the pores of their skin and shit like that. And so the idea is what you're doing is basically, you know, taking that capacity and using that combined with like a form of body mandala to take all of the different heroes and basically, you know, map them onto your body, right? And that's exactly what you find in the Chakrasamvara body mandala, is that the heroes, the Viras, are all located at different points within the body. And the goal is simple, is that you want to have all that power, right? Because what that equals is the ability to reorder the cosmos. It's, you know, when Marduk measures the structure of the deep, what that's saying is that he's basically, you know, measuring out the dimensionality of the new space. And in our case, like we've talked about at length, it's more or less like a six-dimensional, like a hypersphere. And it exists within a larger structure, but that's, you know, each individual reference point is basically one of those things, and that's the pearls. You know, when yeah, the Gnostics are all on about their pearls. They're like, oh, the pearls from the dragon, and da 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 da, this and that. What they're talking about is having the ability to have one of those six-dimensional hyperspheroid things to be your entire reference point. And that's the same exact process we've been discussing the entire time. The pseudo-cavitation event is the six-dimensional thing, is the reference point, is your mind, is the universe. Right? Same vibe. Now, once you can get the system to recognize that you're doing a Marduk thing, you have to invoke the nation of Israel. Like, you have to reconstitute that body on Earth and in space. And the reason why you have to do that is because it's twofold. Well, one is because that is the current narrative structure that is dominant on the planet. And two is because there actually is, like, such a thing. And the larger kind of body politic that it represents is this Empire of Druva, the Eternal Empire thing. It's just this. It's basically run by the fucking Time Lords. The people who are able to create and manage those zones of space-time. And there's levels to this shit. The top one of which is, as we discussed, the people in Procyon. And they are kind of the head of this coalition of, I guess they're families or clans, or I don't know what you really call them. They're like, it's less of family and more of like it's a family unit, but it doesn't reproduce like we think, it doesn't, it's not like they're going out there and having kids. And what they're doing is, at various points, they're reconstituting entire groups of themselves at points which are somehow resonant to where they want to be at, right? And so if they, for instance, want to institute a change amongst themselves as to, like, the nature of their conditions, like, say it's, half and half males and females, and then somehow they decide that they want to change it up and they want it to be like a Goloka, basically, where it's just Christian and a bunch of bitches, which is kind of what happened here. So in order to do that, they, one of these entities, basically, it's a group of individual humans, would have to go reconstitute itself across a different series of events in space and time. And also, while doing that, they would have to essentially rewrite the grand narrative, as it were, and add in some additional context. And in the case here, that was the apology of Marduk and the identity, the mutual identity of, like, Lulamfada and Ludongbin. And basically, with simply those two things, and also the fact that the emergent character, by virtue of accruing in themselves all this power, has to take a certain position, right? And so the reconstituting of the nation of Israel goes a little something like this. Now, you do the accomplishments are all done from the Buddhist side, because the Tantric Buddhists are the ones who conserved all the technical data. I mean, they're the ones who have all the techniques on how to do this stuff. And you simply have to make an equivalence between Hayagriva and Jehovah. They're like Hayagriva, Yahweh, basically the same dude. And that consciousness, for whatever it existed as up until very recently, is now in another sector of like space-time, such that it is not able to intervene anymore in ours. And it is, however, able to communicate, and it's able to inform events in a certain way, but it's not able to run shit like it once did. And that it was all part of a handover that started quite a long time ago. And it's like the new covenant vibe. Like the whole thing with Jesus is that it was the new generation got the handoff. Like the kind of the next iteration of these things, the new Indra or whatever took over, right? But the way it shook out was so fucking bad that it was really going to be the hero twins originally, right? And the other hero twin was there. His name was Simon Magus. And at that time, that entity was basically like, it was so against the way that that Jesus guy was doing things. He was basically like, well, fuck you, man, you can handle your shit. And have an old boy, he just got fucking hung up on a tree and shit. So that's all bad. This time, and that guy was basically, he was trying to like get by on like pure love shit. He was way too hippy dippy about it. And the fact is that during that time, the I guess the cosmic Wi-Fi or whatever you want to call it, the ability to make displays of that Maya power was like at an all-time low. It's at an all-time low, and the tradition that it arises out of had the absolute shit beaten out of it by the Roman Empire. And the Roman Empire has basically eradicated most of that old crew, right? Which is why none of them are really here anymore. Because they can, like, you can kill the immortals, but they could come back if they wanted to, right? You have to think about it, like, from their perspective. What happens, like, you kill them and they wake up somewhere else, and they're like, oh, you motherfucker. And if they want to, they can you kind of like hop right back in. But most of them don't want to, because it's kind of a shit deal. And their time is kind of up. And not only is their time up, like they kind of artificially extended the time that they had in a way that like fucked the system up. So, I mean, basically you have to arrange this, right? You make an equivalence between like the Copper Mountain, Padmasambhava, and God. Like, that's basically the equivalence you're looking at. Or the incarnation of God, right? Inside the inside man. This is the Guru Rinpoche figure. And so, if there's a new eon, you get a new inside man. And whereas last time it was the Padma family, which is, the Amitabha Land of Light thing, this time it's from the Karma family, which is the green guys. And the thing that happened here is that we did the AAA vibe, and that's kind of this union between like 3 of those 5 families got like real close, right? And that's the Akshobhya, Moga City, and Amataba. And the whole deal is, Akshovia doesn't want anybody to come to his spot. That dude's a fucking loner, basically. If you've ever been to the fucking realm of Akshovia, if you've experienced what that is, you're like, oh yeah, I don't want to be here either. This shit is super. It's not like it's boring. It's just fucking. Trust me, it's not your vibe. And that guy is not easy to look upon, and like, he's not even a guy. You know what I mean? Not a woman, not anything like that. You don't want to spend your time, looking at that. No offense, bro. Now, the other thing is, like, the Amoga City thing, like, take it from the king of the Karma family, guys. Our vibe is not living in, like, static modality. I mean, that's just not it. We're not about it. It's very much not nomadic, really, but it's basically like a Doctor Who vibe. It's like you're just running around and, like, not fucking with other people's shit, but, the job that we are normally doing when, one of us doesn't have to do this fucking, like, the equivalent of cosmic jury duty and a mixture of that and, like, plumbing and electrical work. And so, like, do, like, a scooter, which I trip and, like, fucking restructure things for people. When we're not doing that, I mean, it's basically kind of a secret shopper vibe, and all that does is it serves the equivalent of repairing damaged logic gates or something, you know what I mean? It's like defragging a hard drive. And it's fun work, but, when you do enough of it, you kind of get, like, a paid vacation. And once you have the ability to, like, make these things yourself, like, the place where I'm at now is I got one of these things, and so now I just kind of sit back and, like, let it unfold for other people. So whenever it's, like, stable enough, then I can fucking leave. Because it's not that the world is a bad place. It's certainly not. And it's not that anyone here. It's not that we're talking about dying, because we're not. Literally just talking about like, going to other places, and the nature of the work itself is such that, you have motherfuckers, like, talking about the welders union and shit. The welders union is a joke. It's a fucking turn of phrase, in the sense that it's basically meaning, like, worlding. It's like building worlds, right? And there's kind of a classical old school way of doing this, which is utilizing a whole bunch of people that do different kinds of shit. And then there's a way of doing it that involves basically making a lot of APIs yourself. But when you make the API that does the work of constructing a bounded topological region, it's not something that occurs in the fucking ones and zeros on MSN. I mean, that's not the medium that it takes. Like, the medium that it propagates in is, like we talked about, like, circulating systems of data taken in aggregate, but then also being coherent in and of themselves across a variety of sets. And, like, that's describing a network that is capable of not only generating reference points within itself, but it's capable of basically being interdicted in some sense, by a strong enough reference point that will introduce a new axis of organization into that fucking system. And that's what we're here doing. So, you know, the vibe is basically this. It's like you have to combine, from the Western point of view, the characters of Abraham and Noah and, like, Lucifer and Jesus, basically. Like, all into the same thing. And when you do that, you have the outcome of that. Oh, and also like a King Solomon vibe, so right? That character is somebody that, in one or so, the way it worked out is that you have to instantiate with that person. Asherah has to come back, right? Yahweh's wife has to come back. Like Inanna and Gilgamesh have to get together. Like that's the outcome of apologizing to Tiamat. Is that the hero eventually gets to get back with the original goddess, right? So the family's back together. That's the result of that. Like you fix the broken home of the fucking people of the book, right? So the the being, or the, I guess, reference point, I mean, the kind of gestalt data profile that you would call Asherah is roughly equivalent with Inanna and Eresh Kigal and Ninhursag, like all rolled into one thing. And so you have to basically split it back up into three things that are representing kind of three spheres of influence. And then you have to essentially conduct sacred marriages with those things in very, very particular ways, to get everything to recognize what it is that you're doing. Now, hold on a second. What's going on? That wants to buy a bike?
Yeah, for 40. I just want 40.
Nah, dude, I'm good. I don't ride bikes no more.
All right.
All good. Thank you. Like your hat.
Oh, thank you.
Heck yeah, dude. Go Team Green. So I was just talking about that. Yeah, dude, people, it's that song, that hot chick saying Karma is her boyfriend, yeah?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I like that song. So, take it easy, bud. So, once you get to the stage of conducting all the sacred marriages that reconstitute the body of this thing, it's a three-body problem as well. It's like you have to have kind of the temporal lineal authority, which is something like N-ship, right? It's basically the imprimatur of the system at large, right? It's the entire concept of having the right to do anything at all, right? There's that. And then there is the kind of life power. I mean, you call it, it's like the kind of Earth Mother vibe. Like, it makes the plants grow, but it's also the thing that makes the plants grow is also the thing that makes the money circulate. It's like the same thing. It's like a circulatory system. So you have one of these women that kind of like represents the circulatory nature of this thing. You have one that represents essentially the descent of N-ship, as it were, from Anu back in the way, way back. And then you have one that essentially represents a form of justice or spiritual power that surpasses both of the other two, almost a kind of Supreme Court vibe. And then beyond that, there is the character of Hayagriva, or Yahweh. Like, and what that represents simply is military command. And you know, when you have the keys to that kind of military power, you already won any war that you get into, just because of how it works. So to reconstitute that thing, you know, the way I fucking did it was to do those accomplishments. Like I said, first started with Hayagriva, both in red and black form. And the black form is important because the iron sword is the thing that identifies the fact that the party that's being incarnated is not Jesus, but is fucking Azar-Luhi. You know what I mean? It's like basically Lucifer. You know, and the character who is at this point like extremely powerful, because what you may not know about that guy is that this whole shit of like him going through all this rigmarole of getting kicked out and like, you know, having to fucking hang out with hell and do all that shit, getting bad